college, I similarly slipped into this just being not cool. I was friendly and I was cool to myself, but
Mm.
I did not have like any kind of musical prowess in college. People did not listen to my music and did not come to shows that I was doing, which was I went by Maya Bonfire. I was like soft folky stuff that just
Mm-hmm.
was solo and, completely not the vibe. My school was like I don't know if you know like Harrison Smith's current project, The Dare, but like I went
I
to
don't
school with
know.
Harrison. His project at the time was Turtlenecked, and it was like that was what was cool. It was like loud, kind of like boy indie rock.
Yeah.
And I couldn't fit in, but I liked what they were doing, so I decided, okay, this is I'm just only now starting to acknowledge that this really happened because I was so ashamed of it for so long, even though there's nothing to be ashamed of. But I decided I'm going to try to write an album that sounds like Turtleneck. And
Cool.
I wrote Sleep and I got signed to Turtleneck's label, who they were under. And it got on the fader and whatever, which I didn't even know
Yeah.
was, I had no idea what that was. I'm like stereo gum, and it was like all of a
Oh my
sudden,
gosh.
okay, people like this. But this was senior year. I had been like effectively playing to literally zero people that entire time, but just continued to
Yeah.
do it because it felt good. And then senior year, I wrote this album. I had recorded it on my 2011 MacBook Pro with no microphone, just like to the computer. And then Good Cheer, which was the label at the time that was like Mama Bird and Good Cheer were like coming up at the same time. Good Cheer
Mm-hmm.
was like a little more indie, like yeah, like kind of like the turtleneck sound. And Mama Bird was like what it is now, which is like a little more like country, alt country folk
Okay.
stuff.
Yep. Yep.
And then Good Cheer was like, kind of cool, but then completely crumbled after a year of me being on there. It was like the guy who was running it just was going through something I don't know, but it just fell apart.
Okay.
But that year, my senior year, we being me, and then I asked my friends Elias Williamson and Skylar Pia to join the project. Elias played drums and Skylar played bass.
Mm-hmm.
And they just wrote parts to the songs that I was playing, and we played like every week that year. Like I was
Wow.
like writing my thesis, was going through a lot with my own my family was kind of falling apart. There's like really it was a very intense year,
Yeah.
and on top of that, I was playing every weekend and sometimes multiple times a week. And all of a sudden, it went from like zero people listening to like what felt to me like big time, big fish,
Right.
energy. I
Yeah.
was like, holy crap, okay, people like our music now, like
Yeah.
my music now. And it was because I wrote an album trying to sound like the person who I knew was cool. It was an interesting shift to realize that people might like it. And then I just kind of continued from there to release songs. And I had another EP ready to go. So I recorded it really quickly at the first two EPs I recorded were at my friend Jesse Robertson's
Mm-hmm.
basement in Portland. He recorded them. And then I moved to LA and I met Ryan, and he kind
How'd
of
you all meet?
well, he worked for my mom actually.
Okay.
Weirdly. He worked for my mom at her art studio, and I was like,
Oh, nice.
who is that guy? And we fell in love, and then he kind of started to fill in a little bit here and there where because I was playing shows at that point, like I'd moved to LA and people already
Mm-hmm.
kind of knew who we were in a small way. Like Portland
Yeah.
is funny in the sense that you can get kind of Portland famous really quickly. Like
Right.
it's
Yeah.
small enough that people like know who you are and people show up. But then I moved to LA and I was like, no one knows this project, but we were getting some shows here and there. So I needed like it's hard to play like more kind of punky sounding, which is what I used to be doing a little more stuff
Yeah.
with no band. So Ryan plays everything, and he started to play drums, and then we recorded Yellow Has a Pretty Good Reputation in our bedroom in LA that year to tape. It was really hot that day. It was like a crazy heat wave.
Yeah.
And we lived on the east side. It would have taken like an hour to 2 hours at least to get to the beach. And we were like, well, what do we do? So we just closed all the blinds, cranked the AC, which was barely working because it
Yeah.
got so hot that it just was not functioning. And we recorded these 3 songs that day to kind of, and I wrote them as we went, and he had come up with some lines, I'd come up with some lines,
Yeah.
and it was like, this kind of feels good.
Yeah.
We're kind of good at this together.
That's
and
awesome.
and then we had 2 weeks in Vermont before we moved to Philly, which is when we recorded Demonstrating Visible Difference of Height, which was our first kind of like, recording project as it is now, which is like that we spend months at a time now, like deep diving into these songs, and like
Yeah.
fully like instrumentation goes off, and like
Mm-hmm.
we really like give it our all, whereas Yellow, the first thing we recorded was just like playful, which was cool too, but then we started to do that, and that's kind of been what we're doing ever since.
Listen to full episodes of We Could Blow Up only on Spotify.